Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the place where you learn new skill every time you visit. So keep updating yourself by subscribing to the channel. So today I'm starting a tutorial series on Java, and Java is being used in web application, it is used in standalone desktop application, it's used in all the Android apps and mobile games. So guys, today we are going to discuss variables in Java, the main method in Java, and the input output in Java. Variables in Java. Now, a variable is a named memory location which holds the value while a Java program is executed. So that means as soon as we declare a variable, a memory location has been set for it, and where the content of that particular variable is going to get stored. For example, suppose you have declared a variable like which belongs to an integer category A, right? So now in the memory, a particular location has been allocated for this A. So when later on you store a value to this, so that number goes and gets stored at that memory location, which has been allocated for this particular variable. Okay, so that's why it's a named memory location. It's a memory location, but it has a name A. All right, guys. Now a variable is assigned with a data type. As just I told shown you over here, that a variable is assigned with the data type. So if you declare a variable, whenever you declare a variable, you specify the data type also, which makes sure that this variable is going to have the data belonging to this range, belonging to the range of integer. It's going to be a non-decimal number belonging to the range of integer. All right. There are three types of variables in Java. The first one is the local variable. Second one is the instance variable, and the third one is the static variable. All right. Other than that, the data types are also divided into two categories. The first type is the primitive data type, and the second type is non-primitive data type. Now let's see the data types of variable in detail. All right. So data type, by the definition, data type of a variable specify the different values and size that can be stored in a variable, as I just shown you that when I declare int a, the variable a is going to have the data within the range of integers. So that's specifying the range of data which can be stored into that variable. The two main types of data are the primitive data type and the non-primitive data type. So first, let's see what is a primitive data type. These are the most basic data types available in Java, right? Like the int, marks, like the double, percentage. So these are the default data types which are there and which we only use it, right? Now, what is a non-primitive data type? Now, non-primitive data types are also called derived data type or user-defined data type because they are made from the primitive data type. So if I'm going to create a non-primitive data type, I may have to use integer or a double to create. So it's basically derived from the primitive data type and it is defined by the user. All right. Let's take an example. The string, the name variable which belongs to the string class is a user-defined data type or a non-primitive data type. Okay. Similarly, the array over here, which this particular statement, if you are new to the array, this particular statement actually means that the variable, there is a group of variable declared over here by this particular statement, and all the members of that group, the name starts from marks. All right. So the variable, the 10 variable which are going to be created or which has been created by this statement has the names like marks 1, marks 2, so on till marks 9, which will be the last element of that group. So if you observe over here, this group is created by the user. User has created an array, or the programmer has created an array, which actually created this group, and all the member of this group belongs to the integer. All right. So that means this group, which is defined by the programmer, is derived from the integer, and integer happens to be a primitive data type. So that's why the user defined data type or derived data type are taken or derived from the primitive data types, but they are defined by the user. Okay. Similarly, the string name. String is a class, all right, and name. When we talk about name variable, so it can hold a character arrays, a group of alphabets. All right, that we'll discuss later on. What does the string means and how do we handle it? So let's go ahead and see that when I declare a variable int a equals to 50, so what happens in the memory? A location has been assigned to it. So as soon as this declaration is done, this memory location in the RAM has been assigned to it. And when you store 50 to it, that 50 goes and gets stored there, which you can retrieve back in your program when you are using that variable a in some expression or you are just printing it out. All right. So this is the basic concept of variable, how they are stored, what are their types. All right. Now let's discuss in detail the data types of the variable. So far, we have seen that we have primitive and non-primitive data types. So that means the main category of data type is primitive and non-primitive. Now, under the primitive, we have the Boolean and the numeric type. All right. So when we say Boolean, numeric, of course, you understand it's in numbers. When we say Boolean, so under the Boolean category, there's only one data type that the type becomes is Boolean. Now, before that, the non-primitive data types are string and array, which I have just discussed a few minutes before. But under the Boolean category comes a data type Boolean. Now, Boolean is another data type, just like the data type integer, right? When you declare a variable a, and I just told you that it belongs to the integer group, this a belongs to the integer group, so that it can hold a non-decimal number belonging to this integer. Similarly, if I declare a variable belonging to the Boolean, like I declare the variable pass, okay, so the variable name is pass, and it belongs to the data type Boolean. So instead of integer, the data type is Boolean. Now, what the Boolean do? The Boolean data type can only store yes or no into it, or true or false into it. So you cannot store any other data other than this. So where do you use it? You use it for storing the status, like pass. Suppose a student, if you talk about the details of a student, the student will have a name which belongs to string, student will have a percentage which belongs to double, and student might also have a variable called pass, where you're supposed to store yes or no, the student has passed or not, true and false. So in that case, in that scenario, you have to declare the pass variable as Boolean. All right. I hope this makes sense to you now. So let's move ahead and see what is the next data type we have. So the next data type is the numeric is further divided into character and integer. Now you'll wonder why the character, which is alphabet, coming under the numeric. The reason being, every character, the computer treats every character as a number. Now you know that computer only understands the zeros and the one. The voltage is high or voltage is low, and so every thing has to be converted into zeros and one. So for that reason, every character in computer has a code called the ASCII code. All right. So the ASCII code of A is 65 and the ASCII code of B is 66. This we'll discuss in another video, but I'm just explaining you why this character is coming under numeric. So since computer recognizes alphabet with a number, so it comes under numeric, right? Now it makes sense to you. Now the integer. Now under the integer category, we have under the character group first, we have char, all right. Under integer, we have integer and a float. So this is the character group or category under which we have char, which actually stores A and B. Under integer, you have integer and floating point like int and double. Okay. So you store under the integer, you have different types depending on the range of data you want to store, like the byte and the long. So the shortest being the byte and the longest being the long. So it depends on the range of your data, means how big your data is. You specify a particular data type to a variable. Usually we go for int and a long. Okay. Similarly, under the float, you have the float and the double. So exactly like this, the float is a lower limit decimal number and double is a bigger limit decimal number. Okay, let's see about the local variables. Now, local variables. A variable declared inside a method is called a local variable. Let's see in this example. Over here, we have a method declared as calculate, right? This is the body of the method. That means the definition of the method, the coding part will come inside here only. So here we have declared a variable percentage, which we have declared inside the variable. So that means this variable percentage cannot be accessed outside this method. It does not exist outside the method. So that's why it's called a local variable. So a local variable is declared inside a method, right? Next one is the instance variable. Now, what is instance variable? An instance variable is declared inside a class but outside a method. If we look at this example over here, we have the method like name, the marks. We also have one more method, max marks, but that is static. That we'll discuss later on. So we have name and marks. Now this name and marks are not inside any of the function. They are not inside calculate. They're outside the calculate, but inside the class. So the instance variable are the variable which are inside class but outside any method. All right. And if we use the keyword static in front of any variable, that variable becomes kind of constant. You will have only one copy of it with all other objects, or as many objects you declare, you will have one copy of this. Now, what does this exactly means if you haven't got it clearly? In my classes and object video, I have discussed this. All right, so have a look at this. Have a look at that video. Okay. So let's see the third type. The third category is the static variable. Now, what is a static variable? I just discussed with you. A variable declared with the keyword static is a static variable. It is not be a local variable. It cannot be a local variable, right? It has only one copy, that is same value with all the objects. All right. So in layman language, you can understand that when I put a keyword static, that value becomes fixed or constant. All right. With all the objects, the value remains same. Whereas in short, I would try to explain you. I have a name, I have a marks, right? But that is only for one student. I have one variable name, one variable marks. If I need to store the names of two students, I need to create two objects of this class. But I have only one variable name and one variable marks. So what happens whenever I create an object, this name and this marks copy is being stored with every object, right? So as soon as you keep on creating objects, one copy of name and marks are getting stored with them. All right, where they actually store their the content of that particular student. But this particular variable static will have only one copy. So this will have 500 only with all the students or with both students, whereas the name and marks can change. All right. If still there is a doubt, you can have a look at that classes and object video. I have played that out here. All right. So let's move ahead and see what else we have. Now, we have different kinds of variable, and there are cases which may arise that we want to convert from one type to another. I would like to convert something which is stored in decimal to integer, or the vice versa. So there are two ways in which you can do. One is the widening and one is the narrowing. Now, what are those? When we say widening, as the name says, when we store a smaller range variable to a bigger range variable, that process is called widening. For example, if I have a variable called A where I store 10 and I'm storing that variable to another data type variable float, and float has a bigger range than A, than integer, so it's called widening. All right. Now, narrowing, it's also called typecasting, just opposite of it. When you have stored a variable 55.5 or any value into a float variable and you are trying to store it into integer variable, whereas the integer has a lower range than the float. So this is called narrowing. So if you do it directly, it gives an error. So how do you do it? You just have to specify the left-hand side operand or data type over here inside the bracket. So this will make sure that this float gets converted into integer and goes to the A. It's called typecasting or narrowing. Let's see what next is. Next is method in Java. Right now, what is a method in Java? We know that a method is used to complete a task in coding. A method is a collection of instructions that perform a specific task. Suppose I have a class where I have a method called input, I have a method called calculate, I have a method called output. So my input method is going to do the job of input. My calculate method is going to do calculation. My output method is going to show me the output or doing the job of doing the instruction for output. So a set of code which is designed to do a particular job or particular work is called a method. All right. Now, why do we need a method? Why do we need a method and why do we use it? The first thing is the reusability. All right. I can use a method again and again. Suppose I have created a method called input where I have taken the detail of one student. So if I need to take a detail of another student, I need not to define it again. I'll just use the method again. If I need it for the third, fourth, fifth, and 10th student, I need not to do the coding again. I'll just call that input method again and again. This is the way the reusability is done. All right. Now, easy modification. If I have a program, a complete program of say 1,000 lines written inside the main function, so it becomes very difficult for me to modify it when the error comes to make assure or to see where the error is. But if my program has been broken into input, process, and output methods, and I know that my error is coming in inputs, I'll directly go to my input method and do the modification or the change. Third is the readability. You have made your program and you know where the codes are, but if someone else is reading your program and if your program is divided into methods like input, process, and output, it's easier for the other person to see that what that particular set of code is doing. So these are the advantage or use of the method. Why do we need a method? Because reusability, easy modification, and readability is applied using method. Now, how do we declare a method? The first line of a method is called the method header. Now, if you look at this example here, the first word is the access specifier. Now here it says public, so this specifier public means that this method can be used outside the class. Now this access specifier I have done in another video. You can have a look at that video. Okay, the next thing is the return type. That means what my function is going to return back, going to return the integer value. Some integer value will be calculated as the name says sum. So I think the sum would be calculated here. So here it's in this coding part and will be returned back or sent back to the calling function. Now next is the method name, which of course is the sum. This is the method name. Another one, the next one is important part, which is the parameters. So whatever is there inside the bracket, inside this curly bracket is called a parameter. Okay, or you can assume it or you can think it, or it is the input which is given to the method. So when you give, as I just told you, we have discussed that a method is a set of code to do some instruction or to do some job. So if you want a set of code to do some job, you have to supply input to it and it will give you output also. So this is the way you supply input to it, and the return type is the way it sends back to the output. All right. So the last thing is the method signature. Now, what is the method signature? The thing from here till here is called the method signature. The return type, the name, and the parameter together are called method signature. Okay. Now, the types of method. We have different types of method, the predefined methods and the user-defined methods. The predefined methods, as the name says, these are already defined in Java, right? And like length method or the power method. So these methods are already there. We just have to use them. This is used to calculate a length of a word or a sentence or a paragraph. This is used to calculate one number raised to the power another. Suppose you have to calculate 2 to the power 3. So you'll use it like this. You'll pass two parameters to it, where the first will be the base and the second will be the power. So if you call this method like this, it'll give you the output as 8. All right. So these are the predefined methods. which are already there, you have not defined them, you can just go and use it. Another is the user-defined method that are defined by the user, as the name says. For example, over here, this method calculate has been defined by the user to do the sum of two numbers. So this method is called a user-defined method. The parameters are a and b, so the a and b will be passed to this method. It's going to do the sum of those two values which has been passed through a and b, and then it's going to print the sum. So this is a user-defined method. All right. Now the next thing is, and the very important method in Java is the main method. Why we call it a very important method? Because whenever the Java compiler starts running, it goes to the main method and start doing the job from there. After main method, it starts the process and continues accordingly as per the instruction. So the main method is the starting point of execution of any Java program. The syntax of the main method is public static void main string arguments. So this public, we have just discussed that this public is the access specifier. All right. So that means this method can be accessed outside the class also. Now static, as I told you, this method will not create any object. You would have a confusion right now. What is object? What do you mean by static? But when we do classes, when we have done classes and objects, I have cleared that in that video. So please have a look at that. Now void is the return type, main is the name, and string is the argument, right? So the main method, since main method has a string argument, so we say that Java takes everything in the form of string. All right. So that's why the argument or the parameter of the main method is integer. All right. So now I think you have understood everything what we have done so far. So now let's do everything and practically and try to understand it in a better way. So this video has become longer, so I have broken it into two parts, and the practical I'm explaining in the second part. So see you in the second part of this video. See you there. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe it. Also press the bell notification so that you get notification as soon as I release a new video. Share and like the video.